Good evening, gals, guys, ghouls, grim reapers, creepers, sneakers, all of you. I'm here to read some short stories tonight, all of which should hopefully leave you a little chilled. It is spooky season after all. So, without further ado, we're going to start off with The Family O'Fallon. It's a story of generational trauma and the supernatural curse that goes along with it. Is Mactire e Fear. Those are the old Gaelic words Dad had carved into his headstone. I had expected the masonry to be more opulent. Instead, it's a simple black granite rectangle. Though the Gaelic script is inlaid with a shimmering silver paint that brings the stone to life beneath the moon's luminescence, it practically causes each letter to shine like pristinely polished silver in the wee hours of this Halloween morning. The cemetery is secluded on a tiny bluff, hidden amongst the last pines before the air gets too thin for them to grow. That said, our little family cemetery rests as quietly as any other gravesite. However, the ambience of the mountain air is rather different. It's a louder silence, almost palpable. At 11,000 feet above sea level, there is not much around that can add to the senses, so the absence of sensory details becomes more pronounced. As a child, Halloween had been my favorite holiday. Then Mom died. A rock slide struck her car, sending her careening over the edge of the mountain pass. We later learned the incident was caused by the unsanctioned blasting and construction of some rich asshole's holiday cabin. She'd been on her way home with candy for us. It was Halloween, but I was just 9 years old. Instead, that night, there was no candy. No one to look out for us. No one to teach us the carvings of the old world. And certainly, no one to sneak us out for trick-or-treating in the closest real town some 20 minutes away. So, it felt like Halloween died that day too. All that remained was All Hallows Eve. Which is not so much a holiday, but a ritual, a marker, an obligation. Dad never acted like the day had become tainted for him, as if he actually had the human emotional capacity to miss my mother. Regardless, he never slowed down, and he never remarried. Not that he had to. He'd done his duty, sired 3 sons, and raised all of them to be the age necessary for the final ritual. Without intervention, it would have been several more decades before we'd take part in the ceremonies that would occur at today's end. A blood rite owed to our ancestry, or so we've been taught to believe. My brothers saw it as a prize to be won, and they'll be here soon enough. Both had been surprised at the news of our father's passing, yet they had each acted almost giddy, as if the chance to have his responsibilities were not the curse it was meant to be. There's my older brother Colin, who got too much freedom after Mom died, and my younger brother Connor, who received too little. Then there's me, Kieran, just left somewhere floating in that forgettable space between. Yet that never stopped dear old Dad from using me as his personal punching bag when he could remember I existed. Soon, we will have an early morning rendezvous, marking the first time all 3 of us will have been in the same place in over 7 years. Kieran! Connor's obtuse shout fractures the crisp mountain air. I can't quite see him, but his silhouette lumbers down the hillside to where I sit with Dad's headstone. Dad made Connor into everything Colin and I weren't, his ideal heir. Yet the big galoot lacked any sense of decorum, especially for a graveyard at 2 a.m. on a Monday. Hey there, little brother. The words expel from my mouth as he hoists me off the ground in a spine-bending bear hug. The guy has the body of an all-pro middle linebacker with the brain of a chess grand champion. And what did he do with all that? He was a stockbroker. He had a penthouse apartment in the city and a lavish lifestyle that featured drugs, sex workers, and several illicit business practices. The sort that added an extra zero to the end of the balance in his bank account, but sacrificed so much more. Like his heavy-handed influence on investing in companies that destroyed the environment in favor of profit margins. A regular wolf of Wall Street. One who happens to be strong enough to squeeze the life out of me here and now, if he wanted to try. But even if he did, try, that is, that doesn't mean I just let him succeed. Once he finally finishes sizing me up, he plops me down to find the slender man presence of our eldest brother, the politician. More importantly, the House Majority Whip. He sits affixed as silently as a statue to our great uncle's deteriorating gravestone. Evening, Congressman O'Fallon, soft-footed as ever. The man had perfected the art of stealth well into his teenage years. There was no escaping Colin. Nothing was off limits for him. If he wanted to get through a door, he'd tread lightly and quietly, slipping through and pouncing the instant he saw his opening. His handshake is as calculated and strategic as ever. He's feeling me out, trying to get a read on my headspace this evening. He'll play nice. He'll be my big brother. He'll don the sheep's clothing, as he always does, like most politicians. He sought power and influence, both things he's accumulated in spades, despite what or who he's discarded along the way. Though I'm already prepared for the wolf who thinks that his tattered, sheepish veil is enough to catch me unsuspecting. Kieran, good to see you. When will our guide be arriving? Then there's me, the rebel, the runt, the yellow dog, as the old man's inner circle were wont to call me, while my brothers did exactly as my father had blueprinted for them. Move away, learn, grow, and become the so-called big shots from a podunk little mountain town, our Alma, Colorado, where I stayed. I have a nice little operation going here. I run a bar/hodgepodge store. That's what I call it. Have a beer? Great. Maybe a burger and some fries? Sure thing. Also, did you forget to stock up on toilet paper? Bottled water? You name it. Just go to the back half of the building. There I've got just about anything you can imagine lining the racks and shelves. Camping gear, hiking supplies, groceries, and of course, tourist trap souvenirs. I became a non-entity to my family and invisible to those around me. Too plain to ingrain in someone's memory. But I saw what Dad wanted us to see. Then I saw past that. I saw what the other side had done to us. I saw beyond what the old man wanted us to know. I saw the truth. I saw humanity for what it really is. Soon I learned more about the spirits and so-called monsters that Dad had so desperately tried to prevent from accessing our world. Yet he never saw the monsters already here. Like the one whose selfish interests stole my mother from me. My brothers don't realize the dangers that lie ahead of them. The dangers our family has created. That we were not guardians. We were slavers and executioners. These are the natural truths that I have grown to fully understand. I know the truth of the other side. I know what the balance must look like across the fracture. Not even my father can see that. Irrespective of all of this, my brother had a question, and I knew to answer it soon. Still 2:45, and we know she's incapable of being expected any sooner. Somebody's been brushing up on all the rules. I'm surprised, big bro. Colin tries again to throw me off balance with his big meat paw thwacking me across the back. I let him think he's knocked me off balance, and he's getting to me. That's right where I want him. Unsuspecting of his communicative older brother. Never needed to. Dad made sure I knew them, same as you. Our father was just more violent with me. He had to test his limits, know what was too far, and not repeat such things with his prized child. While some scars can't be seen, they are all too present in our wisdom. The quiet autumn night remains still. At this elevation, the moon's glow is brighter, the stars infinite, and the darkness so much quieter. Yet, it is beautiful. This tenebrous landscape is filled with so much more color than the ordinary darkness could ever imagine. Our breaths quietly meld into the air, shimmering like spirits fleeing our bodies. Time passes, and those tiny specters are all that break the reticent silence between the three of us. A place once teeming with life rests as quiet as the graves upon which we stand. Good All Hallows Eve, brothers of Fallen. Whoa, so that's what it's like. Never expected it to be so intrusive, Connor says, looking wild-eyed around his head as if he'd be able to see the voice that only spoke inside our minds. I had almost forgotten that neither of my brothers has spoken with Kylie before. I find her speech intrusive as well, but something that I've been able to grow accustomed to. The wolf pads out silently behind us. She hasn't changed from the last time I had seen her. Her fur is ghastly pale, bordering on an icy blue in the moonlight. One eye has been slit shut, a battle from stories old that I could care less to recite. Her other eye stares blankly through each of us with a milky hue. Her teeth look stained, red like wine. But I know, and so too do my brothers, that those stains are not from fermented grapes. As the fracture weakens, I return to ye, to mark the selection of the next sect. So have the O'Fallon guarded the realms of beasts and those of the other for many centuries. So soon shall one of ye three be responsible for serving as vessel until such a time that the mortal coil shall reach its end. The wolf's voice echoes like that of an old crone throughout our minds. It's raspy and shrill, and still retains that thick and speedy Northern Irish accent. The Kai, or Kylie, as we grew to call her as boys, because Kai had been too hard to pronounce, has been part of our family since our great-great-grandfather came over from Ireland all those years ago.
Have you all brought your firewood for the ritual?
Both my brothers heft large hiking packs filled with firewood. I have a smaller pack. You do know how long your fire has to burn, right? I scoff at my older brother's veiled criticism, just enough to make him think I'm foolish, rather than someone he should be suspicious of. He rolls his eyes, as expected, and hefts the pack atop his fancy outerwear-laden body. Connor, on the other hand, simply chortles an echoing roar toward the stars.
Then you must begin.
So, we start hiking. Kylie saunters off ahead of us, disappearing into the windy dirt road that leads to our destination. It's a 2-hour hike to the base of the Decalibron Loop. 4 mountain peaks, consecutively connected, all above 14,000 feet of elevation. As we begin trekking the mountainside, the sun finally begins to hit us with a warm fall glow. The direct sunlight, uninhibited by a single cloud, feels good on my skin. But the air is so thin that it's impossible to ignore the biting cold buffeting us with each blustering gust. It does not take long to see that my brothers are in for a rude awakening. To me, this has been nothing more than a leisurely walk. The strained look plastered on each of their faces speaks to the opposite experience for them. It's the same look I saw in my father at the end. I think about calling them out, razzing them a little bit. A brotherly jab. But I resist that urge. Not to mention, I'd have to practically stop and wait for them to get close enough to hear me. None of that serves the plan. Halfway up, the dirt trail switches to loose rock and stone. There is still a path, but many of the rocks are capable of shifting underfoot. I hear one of my brothers lose their footing and tumble. I don't care to check. The pathways are safe, for the most part, but that doesn't mean one wrong step on a precariously placed stone could mean a twisted ankle or a torn ACL. The stone gingerly shifts beneath my weight as I take the curve of a violent switchback. This is the exact spot I've been waiting for. Having hiked this trail more times than I can count, I know it like the back of my hand. Here, I am secluded and hidden. I kneel, if anything. They should think I'm just tying my shoe. Instead, I adjust the stone to sit a bit more precariously before continuing up the mountainside. That is, until I hear the sound I've been anticipating. Kieran! Help! I look down and see just how far I've gone since that stone, and it takes me longer than my brothers would like to get down to them. Connor slipped on this stone and he twisted his ankle. I think my knee's pretty fucked too, my younger brother adds as he sits clutching his injured leg. You going to quit then? Probably should, don't you think? I say, knowing how much that will motivate Connor to keep going. Oh, I'm not giving up that easy, the brute says. He pulls a long stick from his pack, meant for kindling, and utilizes it as a splint for his ankle. He limps slowly, but impressively, and expectantly. He does not stop. The hike from here will appear uneventful, but it's where I begin my psychological warfare against Colin. I let him heft Connor up the steeper parts of the trail while I jog up and down, looking for any more precarious situations, of which there will be none. But I can see the doubt creeping into my brother's eyes as he realizes I'm not out of breath. Not at this altitude, despite all that physical exertion and my smaller stature. He, on the other hand, has been breathing heavily for some time, and when I shout down to them, "Only a mile to go!" I can see that neither of my brothers is thrilled at having only traversed 3/4 of the pass. Approaching the last quarter mile, I decide it is time to pull ahead of my brothers, knowing that the rest at the summit will do me wonders. Once Colin finally reaches me, I've been atop Mount Democrat, the first of the 4 peaks in the Decalibron Loop, for roughly half an hour. It's another 40 minutes before Connor limps his way to the top. The sun's position says to me that it's just after midday by this point. There, atop the summit, we each build and light our fires, knowing they must make it to nightfall. Mine might be smaller than my brother's, but I have no doubts about keeping it burning. And once the setting sun finally turns the sky over to the darker shades of the heavens above, Kylie's voice penetrates our thoughts, while all 3 fires still burn.
The time is nigh, brothers 3.
"What are you doing here?" my father had said to me with such disdain. "Putting all your lessons to use," I had chided him matter-of-factly. The scowl across his face was his own, not the spirit to which he lent his body, but there was the wolf, still sat at my father's side, staring with its one good eye, incapable of communicating for several more weeks, but eyeing me with a sense of something I'd call disbelief. I strode to my father, who sat amongst piles and piles of texts, studying the other side, preparing for the cold winter to come when the fracture between our worlds would widen. He looked down at the wolf, perplexed, and heaved himself upwards with an oomph that catches him by surprise. "Not feeling like your old self?" That's the thing. He does look older, and he must be feeling it. As fear washes across his face. "You know, Kylie and I have actually spoken for many years. I've seen what man has done to this world that originally belonged to her and her kind." My father slumps back into his seat, his breath labored. He had not aged a day throughout the entirety of my life, but now the years were peeling off him. His skin sagged, his eyes grew dull, and his hair fell away in wispy strands. What have you done?" "What needed to be done, Father? I've already made a pact with Kylie. But you see, her kind are sticklers for ritual and formality. I cannot have all her power until you've died and I've won the trials. So, I'm just expediting the process." You can't," he stammers out. "Oh, but I have. You thought Connor or Colin would hold the balance? No, they'll just continue to destroy our world the way they have their mortal responsibilities. I, on the other hand, will help Kylie and all her kind restore our world. No more climate change, no more toxic waste, no more overpopulation. Save your breath, Father. You don't have many left. In fact, I better do the deed before you succumb to natural causes. After all, it's the only way she would permit me to directly inherit that wonderful ability of yours. An apex predator survives best because it leaves nothing alive to threaten it. With my father's lycanthropy under my control, I dispatch the only two threats remaining to the other side, with brief ease beneath the cloudless night and a glowing hunter's moon. I drink from their viscera, and it tastes like a godly nectar flowing between the elongated snout where my nose and mouth had once been as a mortal man. Then comes the final transformation, a transaction. Kylie gives me her bite, and the entirety of this world falls away. As she drinks from my blood, I drink from hers, just as I had before ending dear old Dad. When my eyes open and I lick my lips, I take in the carnage of my actions through my own eyes. I see that I am no longer the monster my father had intended for one of his sons to be. I am the one who will restore the balance of our world, as I restore the spirits of the other side, those which had been subjugated by men whose minds had clouded with fear and ignorance so many centuries ago. The family motto scribed on our father's grave comes to mind. Directly, it translates to, a man is a wolf, but its meaning is more accurately, a man is a wolf to other men, an apex predator. I can't help but chuckle at the irony as I whisper the incantation aloud, sealing my pact. Is Mactere et Vir. There you have it, folks. That is a story called The Family O'Fallon